Hi guys, welcome to What's the Matter, the official Mindspan podcast. In today's episode, my dad and I are going to be discussing social media and the impact that this can have on our psychology, both positively and negatively. It should be an interesting one. Thank you so much, and I really hope you enjoy the episode.
So welcome, Mr. Dad. Dad, how are you?
Thank you. Thanks for the welcome. I'm very well, actually. Yeah, looking forward to early spring evolving into something a little bit warmer. We've had obviously some nice sunny days. It's been a bit cold, lots of frosts in the morning, which is nice and fresh and lovely. But yeah, I just feel like I want another sort of like 5 to 10 degrees of temperature of warmth. I feel like like a reptile, I want my body to heat up, really.
Yesterday it was. I don't know what the weather was like where you are yesterday, but it was really cold and windy in Essex, and I had to go to a meeting, and I put on. I think I had an undervest, a roll neck jumper, a long cardigan, and a full length coat and a scarf, and I could barely move because I had so many layers on.
Yeah, and we're only just into the podcast, but yeah, it was similar for me for some evening golf last night.
Yeah.
I was wrapped up.
Oh, I bet it was pretty chilly playing golf last night.
Yeah. Not easy in layers. I'm not the one that, when you start playing golf, you've got too many layers on. You just feel a bit constricted. But yeah, minor complaints because everything's really good, really.
It is. And today well, as I always love our topics, but today we're talking about quite a hot topic, I think. So we're going to be discussing social media and from a psychology perspective, and how this can actually impact our mental health. And we're not going to be just one-sided here. We're going to be talking the good, the bad, the ugly. We want to cover all bases here because there's some real pros and then some real cons. But our main aim from today is we just want you to more to help you more consciously think about social media. Okay, because we might raise some questions today that people have never thought about before with social media. So that's our aim from today. So, Dad, as somebody that didn't grow up with social media, I'm sure you've got.
What are you saying?
You're. I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say. This is a place of love.
More mature?
As an old battered, old man, wrinkly old man, that didn't grow up with social media, I'm sure you have lots to say about this. But I guess if we just start with some good, what's your view, more positive view about social media?
Yeah, you're right. Obviously, I didn't grow up with social media like you perhaps have done. So I lived a fair life without it. So yeah, part of me still sort of confused to some degree why many people just can't get off it, if that makes sense, or it's such a massive part of their lives. I obviously had a fair bit of life without it, so I know that there was a life before social media, and it was fine, absolutely fine. But it is I think we're going to talk about this, but I often say to people when we're talking about social media that I battle with it, if that makes sense, because I can absolutely, it's amazing for many things. Amazing, it's amazing for sort of good, etc. And equally, it's not. There's some very big downsides which we're going to talk about. But certainly in terms of the good, I mean, obviously I've had a business for 20 plus years. You're part of that now. You've also got another business as well too, because you're very entrepreneurial. And I see that social media platforms as an amazing vehicle to communicate our messages, to market, to tell the world what we do, to find people that need our services, to find people that want to become part of our team. So it's an amazing, and again, in terms of cost, it's a fact, it's mostly a fairly cost efficient way of marketing your business and your services. So I get all of that. Obviously, social media, we often see with sometimes local or worldwide issues, a group of people can gather, for want of another term, on social media and become a force for good, a force for positive change. We saw, that a few years ago with the Manchester Arena bombing, within minutes of that happening, the Ariana Grande, within minutes or a fairly short space of time of that awful event, there were people on Facebook and other social media platforms offering to help, offering a bed for the night, offering all sorts of other ways of trying to help people in that situation. So I do find it fascinating. Social media the platforms in and of themselves, they've evolved a lot, and you'll know more about that technically than I do. But I guess in some respects, you could say social media, the platforms, what they are neither good nor bad. It's just how humans use them and engage in them, which can be either, for good or less than good, if that makes sense. But I battle with it. I think I see it as an amazing vehicle and tool that we can use in life for business and personally and etc. But equally, I frustrate myself with the amount of noise.
Yeah. And
what I think, and that's just my view, of nonsense and stuff that's not genuine. But we'll come to some of that later. But yeah, it has great potential for all sorts of good, I think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Sort of to echo what you've said, and maybe add to it, I'm a huge advocate of social media. I have a marketing background. Prior to moving into the area of personal development, I, as you just said, also have my own marketing business separate to the Mindspan work we do, where I help small businesses, local businesses to grow themselves, and predominantly digitally. And I know social media is amazing for that. Like that's a tool that helps. I get to watch people have their dream kind of grow. Like that's an amazing thing to see and to help them with. Equally, I've obviously this, but my best friend I met when I was 4. She emigrated to Australia when we were only 9 or 10. And social media allowed us to get back in contact with each other when we were 16. And many years have passed now since then, but we still talk to each other really regularly. I get to see everything she's up to. Like social media allowed that has probably helped fuel that relationship for me. And there's people need connectedness. Like that's that's a real benefit, not just nice friendships, but like psychologically we need connectedness. Like we are social creatures, and during something like a pandemic we've had, everyone's been locked in. Social media has also been an amazing tool for our mindset in terms of letting us feel connected with people at a time when we couldn't see them. So there is some great stuff that social media can do, and I would never knock that. I'm someone that's on the platform regularly, but with everything that usually gets created, there's often a flip side to that. So we've obviously discussed some of the good stuff. That's probably not brand new information for people, but we've discussed some of the good stuff. But I think
what we didn't want to do, Em, is just have a podcast where we just we diss social media.
Yeah.
Sense, because
I don't want to diss it.
That wouldn't be a great thing to do, primarily because we use it.
Yeah, well, also we
use it.
I'm on it all the time. Like, well, not all the time, but I'm on it very regularly. And social media is something that has allowed us to even create this podcast. Like,
how would we tell people about the podcast? Probably.
Exactly, and so I'm not knocking social media, nor am I saying don't go on it. We just want to talk about. There's a lot where people probably aren't consciously aware of what they're taking in, and that's really where we're going with this today. So we've kind of covered that. Yes, there's some great stuff, and it is great. We love it. We use it. But just to sort of start to meander into that, well, what's the other side of this? I guess you similarly to me will have worked with a lot of people on their self-esteem, around the impact social media has had on their self-esteem. So if I just kind of hand that to you, what in your experience, what have you seen as a consequence of perhaps one of the less than helpful consequences of social media?
Yeah, and initially, just before I touch on some of my experiences with that, and this isn't an up-to-date number, but I was doing some research around social media, and I came across some research that was done towards the end of 2019, and obviously we're in 21 now, but and some figure like 3.4 something billion users of social media worldwide. That's half the planet's population.
That will be even bigger now because of the growth, even just pandemic. Pandemic. I'm even just thinking about TikTok went absolutely mad in 2020. Like that figure's huge that you've just shared, and to be honest, it's going to be bigger than that now, isn't it? Because it grows all the time.
That just astounded me, just to think, crikey, half the population of Earth, well, more than that now, engages and uses social media. And quite obviously, when you get that number of people using and communicating with a medium, there's some of that's going to be for good, some of it's going to be for less than good, some of it's going to be for manipulation, some of that could be political or commercial, some of that's going to be scams. Do you know what I mean? And as you'll go on to talk about, some of the algorithms and the further evolution of the social media platforms, people probably need to be much more consciously aware of what they're sort of being tricked into or how they're being influenced, which obviously you'll go on to talk about much more eloquently than me. But yeah, just going back to, your question around, even my experiences as a slightly more mature person around the less than good side of social media. I mean, I've had increasing one-to-one clients that may come to work with us or me in terms of wanting to find some solutions to life or building some confidence, some self-belief and self-confidence, some self-esteem, because we know how crucial that is to, for good mental health as well as our performance. And not always, but it's not uncommon when I'm working with people like that, where we delve into things and you find out just how much they're exposing themselves to social media, how much they are measuring themselves against what they're seeing. And there is something else I came across in some research. There are many consequences of our, exposing ourselves to social media, if that makes sense. And one thing that jumped out at me, I wrote it down because it was that important, so I thought I'd share it. Social media can create perceived pressure to create or be a certain stereotype that others want to see, and the need to be as popular as other people. That's not me saying that. That's psychological research.
Yeah.
You think, wow, yeah. So the more some people, if we're not on our guard, if we're not really thinking about what we're doing, we're just mindlessly picking this up, opening it up again, opening up a platform or an app, and just that mindless scrolling. Almost like we're in a trance state. Just we're allowing it just to soak up and go in, and we may engage with a few bits, and then if we don't get a response, or we don't get a like, or we don't get some approval, what does that do psychologically and emotionally? So yeah, and I think the tip of the iceberg of that for me is when we sometimes go into schools, and I love working with all people, but young people particularly, and we quite often get asked to go into schools and help to prepare like year 10s and 11s for exams for their GCSEs. So we run little programs that help them to develop their focus, their emotional resilience, to other aspects of the way they're thinking, and hopefully they can approach their exams in a mentally, emotionally better place. And I often talk about revision as part of that process, and creating an environment where you can revise effectively. And then these always come up.
Yeah.
Because I said this a long time ago in a session with some 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds. I said, and of course, if you want to revise effectively, turn your phone off. And it was a tumbleweed moment.
Yeah.
Silence in the room with these 20 or 25, 15, 16-year-olds. And one young lad said to me, he said, Gav, because I'm not a teacher, I don't get them to call me Mr. Drake. I said, you should my first name. They said, Gav, I don't think I could do that. And I said, why don't you think you could do that? He said, because if I turned my phone off to revise, all I would be thinking about whilst I'm trying to revise is what I'm missing out on. What am I not part of? What are the conversations my peer group's having that I'm not included in? So there's that massive, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
As well too. So yeah, we know these devices and social media within these devices can be very, very addictive.
Yeah.
So from your very psychological background, and obviously someone who's worked in marketing as well as you, and using these platforms to influence people, what's the whole thing around addiction? How does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this to you many times, but I always like to ask the question why, like with it. I think that's the marketeer in me of what's the purpose of this? Why, like when I spend so long, a lot in my old job, a lot of what I had to do was to look at behavior patterns and sort of stats for why we were going to do what we were going to do.
This is in a consumer psychology sense, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I think because I've had that innate sort of, when you're recommending something to a client for them to do, you've got to give a reason why. You can't just say we should run a Facebook campaign. Well, why? Like why? It's just always got to give a reason why, an objective and aim. And I sort of was then more curious about why, like, separate to running marketing campaigns, but like there's all these stats about figures going up with people spending time on devices, how much I was looking at eye tracking studies of how long we're looking at different imagery for, like, why do, not just, okay, we spend this long on a device, but like why. So I was very interested in why as species are we doing that. So some of what I'm going to share is just from me having researched those kind of papers. Equally, if anyone's ever watched The Social Dilemma, it is on Netflix, like this also comes up in that a little bit.
And for those that don't know that program,
it's
Social Dilemma is one of those Netflix documentaries, which is where they challenge something, and you know, it can have a very one-sided slant, but actually it gets people thinking and talking about something, and it really looks at social media and talks to people that have worked on the platform, the social media platforms that no longer do, some of them, and just how what are the tools those platforms have evolved and the algorithms to get us to keep picking up this device and our attention.
Because I was just sort of thinking, why is everyone spending more time on device? Like, I was asking that why, and as I say, this does come up in The Social Dilemma, but also this is just studies in general. When we just take social media, for example, I'm going to call it the dark magic, the dark psychology, but they have been designed in such a way that we have neurons firing, chemicals being released in our brain. There is actually stuff going on up here when we're refreshing our news feed, and we've got like the little timer at the top, or sort of the refresh kind of you know what I mean, like circle spinning around, or when somebody's typing back to us and there's 3 dots, and our brains, no one's consciously doing this, but our brains are preempting what feels like a positive release, because it's going to be another hit, like when's that going to happen, when we get likes, when we're getting engagement, when we're getting comments, when we're getting, you know, feedback and approval, and oh my god, you look amazing, your life looks great, like when you're seeing all this approval, like again, that chemically is releasing stuff in our brains. So I know we might call it seeking approval, but the platforms have been designed in such a way that the interactions we get from other people and just the nature of where things are laid out on there is so clever, but it is all done to keep our attention. Like, each of these platforms are fighting for our attention. And as somebody that works in it, and I know that there is good on these platforms, but as somebody that works in it, I really felt like when I was reading some of these studies, like why we are spending more time on these platforms, well, they're designed to be addictive. I felt like the wool had been pulled over my eyes, and I was like, that's so obvious. Why did I not realize that my brain is releasing like that's why it is addictive to go onto these things. And I've seen people, and not just
reward chemicals, isn't it?
It's a reward chemical, and it's like when I've seen things of like videos on social media, but also just common sense, like people have talked to me about this, of they go to bed early with the intention of having a good night's sleep, the intention of getting to sleep early and not going on their phone. Oh, I'm just going to go on there really quickly first, actually. And before they know it, 3 hours have passed. It's the middle of the night. They've not fallen asleep yet. They still want to keep scrolling. And it's because of this addictive nature. I'm sure 99% of people can think of a time where they've been lost in their phone.
I mentioned this to you earlier, but when the Social Dilemma, that program, which has, you know, some controversial stuff in it, and this is not a comment on the program, although I did enjoy watching it. There's a whole lot of strange little things they point out, but the thing that really struck me was, because you know, I've done it, you know, where you get notified on one of the platforms that someone you know, a friend or an acquaintance, has posted a photograph or an image, and they've tagged you in it because you're in the picture. Now you get told they've tagged you in a photograph.
Yeah.
Who isn't curious about what photograph that is?
Yeah.
You know, it's the reward system of like, I need to know. I don't like that loose end. You know, the brain doesn't like loose ends. Yeah. So I you know, it's almost like you can stop yourself. It feels like you can't stop yourself from having a look.
Yeah.
So it's clever, but like you say, it's quite dark magic to get your attention back on the platform, because that's what they're all competing for, isn't it? All those platforms are competing for your and mine, our attention. That's what they sell.
And I do just want to say in this, like, I'm not anti-social media. Like I have been to and worked, not worked for Google or Facebook or Twitter, but I have had very close working relationships with them before in my old job, and I've been to all their offices. I've worked with so many different people at their companies. I've had additional training and been part of programs and schemes in my old work where I was really heavily involved with Facebook. And I think they are an amazing platform. I'm really not knocking them.
Organizations.
Yeah, they're not evil. It's just, but yeah, and I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking people using the platform either. As I say, I use it and I think so much good can come from it. But what I really want to hone in on is that people are consciously aware of why they are on the platform a lot, because I have clients say to me, I just can't help myself. Before I know it, they're reaching for their phone, or something I've noticed so much more with my, well, I don't just mean like friends, but like, so when I've been at social events, people are either sat on their phones or they've got to have their phone right next to their hand. And not because they're consciously thinking, I can't live without this, because of course, black and white, yes, we all could. But there's a subconscious association with that feels good. They're almost, it's like it is a reward system. Yeah. And when I became
By the way,
very,
I've only got this here because we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Not because I need it.
Mine's in another room. Lead by example.
Trying to demonstrate. That's what I knew I'd be doing. Yeah.
No, but I just really, really encourage people to be very aware of why it feels so good to, or addicted, maybe not good, but addictive to go on your phone, to keep scrolling, to be stuck in these sort of YouTube holes or dark holes of the internet where you're thinking, oh God, where has the time gone? I've just wasted half a day. But I mean, this isn't about my goals in my life or anything like that. But when I found out those whys, like why those stats are going up, why are people getting so reliant on it physically, I became a bit rebellious. And whilst I do work on it, I don't want to be one of those stats. So I really like to get my screen time down each week when my phone says you've averaged blah 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 this week on your phone. That's 5% less than last week. I really like to be not on it, even though I know there's some real good with it. But one of the big things here is obviously that understanding why you want to grab for it a lot. But the other thing I just want to really talk about here is what you're taking in. So just to tell a story about one of my clients, we were doing lots of work on her values, her sort of self-esteem, like you say, kind of quite a big thing with social media, but her values and what's important to her. And she had this perception where she said, I feel positively a lot of the time, but I just feel very negative about the world. I feel like the world's gone crazy. I feel like everyone's opinions conflicted with hers. And she just was carrying around this anger and baggage like quite a lot of the time. And after a while, I just said, I hope you don't mind me asking, but like, because you've referenced social media a lot, but what sort of things do you follow? And she just, obviously following a variety of accounts, but hadn't actually taken the time to think, I'm following a lot of accounts that conflict with my inner values. And everyone's sharing a different message on social media. And she's somebody that became quite passionate when we defined her values about sort of being eco-friendly. I don't mean anti-materialistic in a bad way, but someone that she wanted to upcycle, recycle, do good for the planet, and very green. But actually, a lot of the accounts she was following, she wasn't following accounts like that. She was following a lot of fast fashion accounts, a lot of mass production accounts, a lot of accounts that looked gluttonous and greedy. So no wonder she felt like the world is an awful place, because all she's seeing is something that conflicts with what's important to her.
And we also know, Em, don't we? Even I do at my mature age, that the more she follows those and looks at those, the more those platforms will show her more versions of that as well too.
Because the platforms are built to serve you things they think you're interested in, because they want your attention. So when I said to her, here's an idea, why don't you just go through those that you follow and remove anyone that conflicts with, unless they're a family friend or something where it'd be awkward, but unfollow any accounts that really conflict with your inner values. Or if you don't feel that you want to unfollow them, just be very aware that their values are different to yours, and that's okay. But actually what she then started to do was follow accounts that were sharing, you know, similar views to her, and she suddenly felt like the world became more eco-friendly. So it's not, you know, I don't mean it negatively, but it hasn't. It's just what you're consuming sits better with you. So I think that's another really big thing for people, is to be very aware of what you take in, because you don't have to follow anything. Like we're the ones that are choosing what we take in. And if, you know, I know we're going to get onto this a little bit further in, but like how do you feel when you scroll on your feed? What actions are you taking after you've been on your feed? And sort of how much time are you spending on this? I think consciously think about the consequences of what you're taking in. Do you feel good, inspired, empowered at the end of looking through your social media? If so, wonderful. You're probably following the right people for you. If you tend to feel, oh, that looks so much better than my life, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to have that, or I'm so angry about what they're sharing. If you feel really negatively, I'd highly encourage you to have a look through your follow list and just kind of have a bit of a cull and really think about, what do you want to take in?
Well, there's a flip side to that as well, though, Em, isn't there? That obviously people are aware of the term echo chambers, where we're, you know, whatever our beliefs and values are, we tend to be attracted generally to the same thing, and then we reinforce each other's values for good or less than good or bad. Is there a place to actually consciously follow or look at some stuff that isn't part of your own value system or thoughts?
I think definitely there is, but I think it depends how you. I think it's this whole thing around how you consciously think about it.
Yeah, so consciousness, isn't it?
Yeah, it's that consciousness. So I don't follow everyone who's the same as me. Like, I don't do that at all. But
same as you.
You are. But I follow a variety of things. Some things that challenge me. I have an interest in business development, obviously, as someone that has their own business or business ventures. I like to see how other people are doing that. Now, some people grow their business differently to me. So I like to see that. I like to see health and fitness, because that's something I'm hugely passionate about. I'm not a vegan, but I love looking at recipes. There are some vegan accounts I follow. It really just depends. I think, as I say, it's like consciousness on it. So I'm very conscious of the addictive nature of social media. I'm very conscious and not just social media, but our phones. I'm very conscious of the impact it can have if you continually take in things that really conflict with your inner values, and the impact this can have on your self-esteem. I'm very conscious of those things. I'm aware of them. I still go on social media, but I take it very differently. So there are certain accounts that I wouldn't unfollow because I know the people, and they might really feel very comfortable sharing their political view all the time. Might not be the same as mine. It's good to be friends with people and have people in your life that do add, you know, a variety.
Or a different perspective or a different thought about something. Yeah.
But if somebody is continually putting a message out there that I think I don't like to see that stuff. If it's very destructive, I don't unfollow them. I just mute them, because I don't want to cause drama, but I just don't want to see that stuff all the time. I know, I'm aware of how I feel once I've seen it. So if I don't want to see that stuff, I just don't really tend to put it in my.
I think it's an example, Emma, you know, and social media and the devices and what's on them and it's an example of if we are going to live whatever for us is a successful, happy, fulfilled life, what do you want to be? And we think about that really valuable thing called time that we've talked about recently. What do you want to be spending your really valuable, precious time exposing yourself to?
Yeah.
And to being more conscious about that, rather than just developing a sort of almost like a subconscious, thoughtless habit to just keep picking the damn thing up and scrolling mindlessly, I guess.
Yeah, it is. Very few people, I imagine, are at the starting their day going, I'm going to waste my time today. I'm going to waste it. I'm going to feel really rubbish. That's why I'm going to set out to do that and go and consume loads of content that really I feel quite crappy for. I'm sure nobody's planning on doing that, but there are a lot of people that are impacted by what they're seeing, not realizing why they feel the need to go on their phone so much, not realizing why they might feel compelled to go and buy something really random. I think it's just that conscious awareness that I'm just really trying to encourage. And
sorry, I'm on that front, just around just how much, conscious awareness about how much do we pick this up and look at it and scroll mindlessly, etc. Again, obviously, I'm slightly more mature age-wise than this, but some stat I came across within the last 12 to 18 months around, a typical young person, I can't remember which generation it was now, but based on their current usage and projected usage of the device, it was either 4.5, it was projected there'd be either 4.5 or 6.5 years of their life they would be looking at a screen, a small screen. 4.5 or 6.5, one of those two. And it might be different now, the stat might be different.
I feel like it could be even more than that,
Yeah, well, I thought, well, that sounds shocking. To sort of think, years and years of your life is projected that you'll be doing this.
Yeah, I know.
That's like, wow, that's frightening. That's shocking, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yet, how many people even watching this and listening to this, and even we engage in it as well too, will think, actually, yeah. I mean, you have the stats come up, don't you? You've spent so many hours on your phone today, or this week, and you talked about trying to get yours down, and wow, just if we're engaging in this stuff so mindlessly, just how much of your life is passing you by, how much you're missing things, how much you're missing getting your head up, looking at what's around you, being present, all the other stuff that we talk about. But we're not saying social media is bad.
Yeah, it's not bad, and there are, I'd say, as for us, even if we just talk about Mindspan for a moment, like that social media allows us to share messages, like and educate people. Like we always want to, our content, I think our mission's always to either provide something tangible or useful that somebody can use, whether that's a top tip about how to change their mindset on something. Which we're trying to share a lot of brain facts that people might not realize, which we're trying to be informative. So somebody needs to be on social media to see that. Right. Yeah. So we're not saying social media is bad. And I'm not saying that you have to use social media to change your life for the better. You absolutely don't. But just I've decided that my use of social media is I want it to be information rich. So whatever I'm taking in is I'm either learning from it, I'm sharing something that is information rich, or I feel inspired. That's why I use it.
Mindless, is it?
That's not mine, but I've consciously decided how I want to use the platform. Someone might want to consciously decide to use it differently to me. Someone might just want to use it for speaking to other people. Someone might just want to use it to fuel their love of fashion or travel, or we all are going to have different reasons for doing this. But
the thing I would just say you're encouraging people to consciously choose their reasons, aren't you?
Yeah, and completely. And I guess, as we say, if we were I could probably go on about this for a very long time, but if we were going to kind of wrap this up and just say we want to leave you with some things to think about. But
wrap up then. Shall I ask you something?
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure if you were going to get the cue.
No, you normally do this.
I know.
We're a bit out there today.
We're being different.
So based on all of this, Em, and again, we could talk about this because it's a big subject and there's much debate and there's increasing amounts of research on it as well too, psychologically. So based on the things we've shared, you particularly we've shared today, what's a takeaway? What can people do?
Yeah.
What recommendations be?
So we're not saying don't engage in it. We're just saying if you want to engage in it, how can you do this for good for yourself or for other people? And there's just 3 questions I sort of want to leave people with to really think about for themselves with social media. So I did slightly touch on this earlier, but how do you feel when you scroll on your feed? Do you feel happy? Do you feel stressed? Do you feel excited? Do you feel sad? Like, how do you feel when you're currently scrolling on your feed? What actions are you taking after going on your feed? Are you compulsively buying things? Are you starting to question yourself? Are you feeling inspired to take an action and go and join a gym or make a recipe, like what actions are you taking off the back of your social feed? But the final thing is, how much time are you spending on it? Are you wasting hours, days, years? Like, are you wasting your time on it? Do you feel like, yeah, actually, do you know what, I do get stuck on social media and I don't know why? Like, are you doing that? Because I'm not saying don't go on it, but just if you feel like, yes, you're wasting time, we've done a whole podcast on time. If you feel like you're wasting time, I just have a really good think about, how can I change that? So there's just kind of 3 things I want to leave people with. Because I'm not saying don't go on social media, like it's a great place, but just think about those things for yourself and the way that you use the platform.
Just repeat those questions quickly for people, Em.
So how do you want to feel when you scroll on your feed? Sorry. Well, yeah. How do you want to feel when you scroll on your feed? That wasn't what I initially said. But what actions are you taking after you've been on your feed? Perhaps what would you want to be doing? And how much time are you spending on it? Are you wasting any time? Just those are kind of the sort of key finishes, I'd think. But yeah, I mean, thank you. Sorry, I feel like I spoke a whole lot on that.
You did, yeah.
But,
obviously, I use social media, have done in business, particularly for years, even dabbled a little bit personally. And, the podcasts go out via social media. I sometimes do my dad dog walk and talk. Yeah, like for 2 or 3 minutes. Something will come into my head when I'm on a dog walk. And I think I just want to mention this and share this with people. But it's mostly with an intention to put some stuff out there that will give people something to think about or stimulate people's thinking, etc., based on what we do within Mindspan. I'm not one to share the meal I've just eaten in a restaurant. That's not my sort of thing, really. But yeah, but you've, as someone who's grown up more in the social media world, really, it's just really interesting for me, and with your psychological background and with your consumer psychology background. Yeah, you've got some really interesting things and points of view on this whole subject. So yeah, so you have spoken way more than me, because that's the value today.
Oh, well, I'm sure we'll pick a more old topic next time.
Yeah. Use of walking sticks.
Yeah. How to fit your dentures and the psychology behind it.
Thanks, Em.
Oh dear. Well, anyway, if this has struck a chord or sparked any questions from anyone from listening today, or you've got any questions about what we've shared, please, as I always say, feel like you can get in touch with us. We're very passionate about this, and yeah, we love to talk, if anyone hadn't realized. But
absolutely,
thank you so much for your time today, Dad, and thank you to everyone who's listened along, and we'll be back again soon.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of What's the Matter? My dad and I are going to be back again in another 2 weeks with a brand new episode. If you do have any questions about what we've shared about today or any of the content that we've discussed, please do get in touch. And if not, we'll see you soon.